Well, I'm super pumped for this chat today on the podcast. I have asked my beautiful friend Hayley Osborne to come and join me to talk all things marketing strategies. So, welcome to the podcast, Hayley.
Hello, Christine. Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be on your show.
Well, I'm inspired and I'm really excited about our topic today. And I think before we even dive into anything like that, I would love to know a little bit more about you so the listeners can understand who they're hearing this from. So, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so I'm Hayley Osborne and I help business owners, small business owners, particularly service-based business owners, to become the number one in their local community, both online and offline. And the reason I say smaller business owners is because I believe strongly that the small business owners are the backbone of our economy. And for those listening overseas, we're in Australia, and I believe this to be, the case. And I feel like the more I can demystify, I guess, local area marketing strategies, both on, and I say online and offline, but I say local because, your audience locally with it, whether it's social media or whatever, it's still local, right? So, but I often find that the word marketing and the word strategy can be quite convoluted and quite overwhelming. So it's my role to try and, I guess, debunk those big word myths and kind of, I guess, step out what they actually look like to get business owners achieving and increasing sales. So that's me in a nutshell. I just to preface this business that I'm running is Hayley Osborne is what it's called, and it's been around for 4 years. But prior to that, I had a fashion label, I've had a candle business, and I've had a big corporate life marketing some of the world's biggest alcohol brands. So I come with lots of experience both professionally and within my own business, which is exciting. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. And I love that you've brought all of your past experience into it, right? Because it's like often we start businesses and forget all of the beautiful experience that we've had. And I love that you actually go, okay, all of these key things have brought me to the ability to demystify and debunk things and to actually make things uh, clear, right? Because it's one of the biggest things for small business owners is that everything seems so convoluted. And I think sometimes marketers also make it more complicated because they're trying to sell their method or they're trying to sell it a specific way. Whereas actually, we just want to make it feel like we actually know what we're talking about, right? Like I think with small business owners, it can feel like we're so far apart from marketers that we almost feel silly asking the questions that we really want to ask.
100%. Yeah, that you nailed it. And I find that comes up a lot. And it's not fair. It's like, when you start a business, you don't expect to have to be like the marketer, the accountant, but you have to be all the things and you have to be good at them if you want your business to make it past that 1 year mark, which, you see a lot of businesses don't because it becomes too much. So, but why should it when these things are actually can be explained in a really easy to understand way that you can, I guess, implement into your business and then activate and then create, lots of music,
Yeah.
momentum.
And I think it's such a like it's a flooded area, but I think at the moment as well, with the last, 6 months or so in business, so much has changed in such a small period of time that I think that everyone's kind of like, scrambling of like, okay, what is my strategy? Because my strategy that I had 6 months ago is not working anymore. So I've got to
Mm.
start shifting and changing things. So I love how you talk about being really focused on the local capacity and really making sure that you're becoming known in that area. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about like why that you feel that's important for a business owner?
Yeah, so I just like I said before, I think that business owners, there's no in terms of doing one thing and making that work. I think you have to do all the things, but that can be, like I said before, really overwhelming. So it's my role, I guess, all the things, but what does that look like from a very like easy to understand way? And that's, yeah, I guess it's my role to demystify that in terms of what does the strategy look like? What does the socials look like? It comes down to a really simple thing. What does the leads look like? What does your storytelling look like? Because if you are selling on your social media, and I say this a lot, it's like throwing water balloons at a porcupine. It's never gonna work. I know, right? I didn't make that up. It's actually a quote from someone really famous, but I can't remember where I got it from. But it sort of stuck with me because, I have a membership. It's called Superhero Marketing. And, I want people to be their superheroes in their own business, the superhero marketers that they can be. The word comes with a lot of a backstory. So it's not just a word that I've plucked out of nowhere. But yeah, I think simple as storytelling. Strategy is a big word. And I think I digress from your question, but does that we can go into that.
Yeah. Yeah, let's explore that quote, right? Like, so when you think about like selling on socials, what do you see people getting so wrong?
Oh my goodness, I see this all the time. And often when I'm creating a strategy for clients, I see, you get stuck, you're so close to your business that you can't see it anymore. And there often is a beautiful story within a business that is never told because we often slide into the sale. So I've got this thing, it looks like A, this is how you can work with me. Here's the link in my bio to buy from me. When in 2022 leading into 2023, unfortunately it's boring,
Yeah.
and like as consumers, we want the real deal. We want to see like the blood, sweat, and tears, and we want to be served it in a really lazy to consume format, which is video, because as consumers, number one, like we're sick of polished, I'm finding, and we're lazy. So how can we like unpolish things and make them really easy for our audience to kind of jump on and like be absorbed in our story? Now, then the kind of the opposite to that is, yeah, but I don't want to tell my story online. Like I'm a really private person, so I don't want to share my life. Now, I'm like, well, you don't have to, but if you had a strategy on what you were going to talk about, then you wouldn't have, like, that's not what I'm saying. And I don't mean, yeah. So does
Yeah,
that
if you
make
don't want to
sense?
share what you eat throughout the day, if you don't want to share what your relationship is like, you don't freaking have to. But you do have to
Correct.
share the important things that your customer cares about, right? And
Yep.
they do want to see a realness to it. You're so right. And I think that the hard part with business owners is that I think specifically with like Instagram's almost like trained us to be curated, right? Like it has to have a perfect feed and the image needs to be professionally taken and all of that. And you're right, the market is going in the way of like, well, people actually don't want to see the too polished, too fake, too posed. It's actually more like the realness that comes through the
Mm,
authentic space. And that's why I feel like people are actually leaning much more closer to TikTok now, because
mm,
it's such a real storytelling platform that people are
yep.
just like being a part of something or enjoying some type of entertaining content because they're sick of being sold to or it being too polished. So what would you say then? What's our next step? What do we do?
Yeah. So back to the quote, like you kind of wanted to go back before, like, selling on social media is like throwing water balloons at a porcupine. So I think the number one thing in order to not do that, to be a good storyteller, is to take yourself out of your business to work on your business and look at that periscope view of, okay, so what does your vision for the business look like? I think that's number one. And what is your, I guess, foundations for success? Number two, goals, number three, and then what kind of categories do you need to create in order to achieve those? And then from the categories, what parts of that can you activate and how does that look? And that's the real part, right? So, I often like to break things down into, okay, so let's talk, if we talk specifically social media, right? Because we don't want to sell on social media, we want to story tell. So if we break that down, because that's a really high churning content space. And if you want to do 7 posts a week, but you don't want to sell and you haven't done a strategy, you're pushing shit up a hill.
Yeah.
So the way I like to work with my clients is, and what I teach in my membership is I come up with, the caption categories that you are willing to talk about and then photo topics. And usually there will be about 10 each. So if you do a nice cross section, you can come up with something different, then you've got more than enough to talk about. I'm kind of like pointing like a graph here for everyone to see that you can kind of talk about something different every single day with a different photo that isn't selling. And it's a beautiful story because people purchase stories. They don't buy sales.
Mm,
You
mm.
know, and if you're very kind of what's the word I'm looking for, like structured in your approach, or you're launching something and that is your objective for the next 7 days, or anything that you think might be a bit salesy, call it as it is on your socials. Guys, for the next 7 days, just so you know, you're going to be flooded from me because I've got this huge thing that I'm, so call a spade a spade. And I think that's what people are looking for, like today and 2023.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because I think like then once people are aware of it, it doesn't feel like it's being pushed upon you. You get to choose whether you want to be there or not. And so you'd be like, oh, I know that she's selling, but I'm kind of slightly interested. So I'm going to just hang out here. And other people would be like, nope, okay, I'll come back next week when it's back to normal programming.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
That's,
Yep.
yeah, I
Yep.
love that, being open and honest with it, with what the purpose of it is. And I think like, actually, I would love to hear your opinion. Is there anything else in particular that you feel the business owners need to do that kind of sets that up? Because I feel like sometimes what can happen is that people get so caught up in what's happening in the world, and then they go into sell mode, and then it's like almost like they're, like you said, it's like throwing stuff at at you. Whereas is there anything else you could be doing in the meantime in order to develop that story, in order to really, develop that community online?
Yeah. One word is consistency. Like through and through, and by consistency, it doesn't need to look like 7 days a week. It needs to look like a minimum of 3 times a week. Because then you can really shine, showcase your zone of genius in a beautiful way. And I find that if you don't get that storytelling and consistency right, you can't just go into sell something. It
Mm.
doesn't work like that. You have to actually create. It's like being at a networking event. Like you would never go up to somebody and say, "Hey, buy my thing." You just wouldn't do it. You'd be like, "Hi, I'm Hayley. Nice to meet you. Why are you here? La la la." I kind of like to make a practice of saying when someone new comes into your world, like say hello. That's what you would do in the physical sense. And the digital space is just becoming more and more like that because of COVID, because of lots of different reasons, So I don't know. That's one way to stay consistent and also show your face.
Yeah, I agree.
This like makes people cringe to have to do that. But one thing that I have learned, even for myself and for my clients, and I've seen like massive results, is when you show up, you become confident. You can't wait until you're confident to show up because that never happens ever. I never, like when I started, I found it really hard like 4 or 5 years ago to show my face on my social media, whether it be going live, whether it be appearing on my stories, and becoming like vulnerable in the storytelling way. That's a planned way, not like this is my husband, these are my kids. I don't do that. But people know me,
Mm.
and I've only become confident by showing up.
Yeah, you're
And people
absolutely
say,
right.
how can you do that? How can you just show up live? How can you go from boom to boom to boom? And I'm like, well, it's been like a consistent effort and I've become more confident. It's the same as you, like when you step on a stage to speak. It's
100%.
it's
It doesn't
hard.
come naturally,
No.
right? It's not something that was just easy from the get-go. Absolutely. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is that people want to know who they're buying from. And if they don't feel connected to you, then putting up a graphic, or, you know what I mean? Like a couple of graphics or a couple of reels that feel really curated doesn't really land. And I think I would love to hear your opinion on this, because this is what I've been starting to notice as well with reels, is that it's only one small piece of your, not even marketing, it's one small piece of the bloody platform. And if you're just doing reels that have an audio over, like a whatever you call it, perhaps the audio over,
Song, yeah, something.
um they're not really getting to know you. They might be entertained, but they're actually not getting to know you or your expertise. Whereas I feel like the people who are showing up on reels and actually sharing their opinion or their insights, their knowledge and expertise, it's developing the relationship much more stronger. Whereas I feel like, yeah, sometimes the reels can be a great entertaining piece, but it's not going to sell anything for you.
Yeah, I think there has to be definitely a nice balance. And coming from a marketer, reels are an element. And unfortunately, like if you're listening to this podcast and you come in going, right, I need to know what to do, you need to do all the things. And it is overwhelming. And the only thing that makes it overwhelming is not having a strategy and not having a plan. And it's uncomfortable, but that means you're growing, right? And I want to grow my business, I want to grow my sales. Well, you need to do these things. You need to do all these things, and done is better than perfect every single time. If you go back and have a look at my first reel, oh, I've left it there. Wow. Oh my God, it's so embarrassing. But you see the progress over time. I can't believe, like, even as reels came out, now where I'm at with it, and I've got so creative that there's a million ways to bring something to life, and done is better than perfect. And
Yeah.
you'll be surprised at how viral the unperfect one goes.
100%. That's why TikTok
So
is so viral.
yeah. So I think you have to be everywhere as a business owner. You can't afford not to be, but in order to not get overwhelmed, you've got to have a plan of attack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and just another thing I want to say on content. So, everyone's probably thinking, yeah, but that means I have to create so much content. And how do I do that? And la la la. You work from the top down. So if you've got a hero piece, and for me, that looks like my podcast every week. My podcast is the main piece of content that creates my weekly email to my database that then sets up my social media. And it's a top-down approach. So you need to, like, once you get into this beautiful rhythm, it's lovely to reappropriate content for platforms. And what works on LinkedIn won't work on Instagram or Facebook, and might not work on your podcast. So you've got to come up with a nice, beautiful flow that feels good to you.
Absolutely. And so, like, content is only one piece, right? So content's only one little piece of the story. So when it comes to really tapping into that local area marketing, what do you think are the key things that we need to be focusing on?
So I think creating a nice pipeline of new leads, which would mean, look, I think no doubt social media is definitely the number one. And what it looks like for locally for businesses could be like all sorts of marketing. I think that the days of traditional marketing are not dead, but they're more laborious. So letterbox drops, whatever that looks like for you. I think as a small business, those big screamy pieces of marketing are not money well spent. So out of home stuff like billboards, bus shelters, and all of those things, I think, yellow pages were great, but now that's social media. So if I were starting out again, I would harness in my local area by following them on social media, by popping into their DMs and saying hello. I'm just starting out. I'm looking for, la la la, love what you're serving, blah blah blah, whatever it is. And just being unafraid to make those bold connections, because you would do it if you were at a networking event.
Yeah. So
So we
basically what
can't, we don't always have those opportunities though.
Yeah, that's true. So, and you're right, that years and years ago, it would have cost so much money to go and create, one, a website, two, to actually get people directed to that website. It might have been through a billboard or an ad in a local newspaper and things like that. And that cost a fortune. Whereas now we've got people right there at our fingertips that we can be accessing. And I think that what you're explaining is like, let's treat it like a relationship rather than actually going, it's this thing where I get to sell my stuff. Because I think that's the hard part, is that so many businesses get told like your social media is your shop front. And it's like, but don't treat it like your shop front, treat it like a space where you can welcome people in to have a conversation and actually talk to people, rather than it just be one-sided. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I find, is it becomes one-sided. Is there anything else that you would suggest us do? Like, yes, so local marketing, networking, the social media.
I think if you can kind of not get involved with your local council, but something that attracts small businesses. So, like for me in Adelaide, I'm a part of, there's SA Women in Business, there's there's all sorts of business groups, and they catch up for lunches, they catch up for like local coffee groups. And, you know, one thing that I've learned is just because there might be a few people doing what you do, don't be kind of detracted from that when you are putting yourself out there, because how many coffee shops are there? There's so many coffee shops and there's room to coexist. So, by putting yourself into those local groups, you've got to do research and find out what they are. I mean, I don't know in every different state, but I could find out definitely. And I have done for different strategies that I've built for my clients. But putting yourself in those situations to connect with businesses that are doing great in your local area is really important, because word of mouth is very, very powerful too from a local perspective, and make your name known.
Mm.
Don't discount like whatever your zone of genius is, because you've created your business for a reason, because you're good at it. And, remember, how many coffee shops are there? That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. So is there anything in particular that you feel that you would have liked to have done sooner in your business that you didn't do?
So, oh my God, I love this question. Yes, I wish that I had sat down and created a 12-month plan of like lead magnets. So freebies. I wish that I had done that from the get-go, because what that would have done is started building my email list from the get-go. So what I mean by that is I recommend for my private clients and in the membership that you develop one a month, a new like freebie downloadable a month, because it showcases your zone of genius. And the reason for the frequency is what connects with one person might not connect with another. So you've got to be creative in your words to appeal and get on different people's pages. So building my email list, I wish that I was more serious about that from the beginning.
Mm.
But I
So
wasn't.
key. Yeah, it's so key. And I think like it's so interesting actually. A lot of my businesses that I've been working with recently, it's one of those key areas where they found that because Instagram's changed so much, they're not finding they're getting as much reach, and there's a whole bunch of things that are happening in the marketing space, that they were getting really disheartened. And I was like, okay, we need to just look at what is working. So rather than going, okay, all of these things aren't fucking working, what
Mm,
is actually working? And I remember like two of them specifically said to me, my email marketing. Like when I email out my list, one, the open rates are amazing, and two, people buy. So it always increases my sales. I'm like, amazing. Okay, so how are we going to get more people on your email list? Like that's your whole
mm.
goal, your whole purpose now in the next 3 months is literally creating this space where you can get more and more people on your email list. Because now that as we're recording this, it's November and we're about to go into like Black Friday week, which is like so hard for people to get seen on social media, that we're just getting flooded with ads left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would suggest in order to stand out from the crowd?
Well, depending on what you do as a business. So, if you are if you are offering a Black Friday sale, um, I would have been very purposeful over the last couple of months with my marketing and my consistency. If you haven't done anything the last month, I wouldn't be even contemplating that, because I feel like it's a lot of effort for very little reward. So don't do it. If you are thinking about running Facebook ads and you haven't been doing them all year and you just want to do them for Black Friday, I
Oh
wouldn't do
man.
it. It's a waste of money.
So
I think that you're like, by being consistent, it helps you to have huge wins when these opportunities come up. But if you're not, then I feel like you just are really wasting your time, when, your time is better spent sitting down and going through what your pipeline of new leads looks like. And don't forget too, like, I consider social media to be it's a very cold audience, so it's our responsibility to move those followers, our audience, over onto our database, because they're our warm audience. That's our red shit hot audience that, you know, people want to hear from you. And if you've got a database, it doesn't even matter how big it is. If you're not like emailing them and you're not landing in their inbox, it's almost like spamming in reverse. That's what I
Mhm.
like to say, because people sign up to hear from you. And if they don't hear from you, like, I would be upset. So if I signed up to your email list, I love everything you're putting out there, but you're not giving me anything.
Mm.
Like, not necessarily selling, but it's like, oh, you've got a new podcast episode that's come out. Why wouldn't you want to talk about it? I need to know, because unfortunately, I think the stats are you need to be served 22 times um, to consider a brand or a personal brand or whatever that looks like into your repertoire. So as a marketer, we need to serve, or as a business owner, we need to serve our clients 22 times. Now, if you think about that, it's like, I don't know, 5 Instagram posts, 5 Facebook posts. You've got your SEO down pat. You're emailing once a week. Like, that's not even 22 times. So we've got to get really clever and consistent and all the things. Did that that was a really long-winded way to answer your question, but
But that was
yeah,
perfect. Yeah, it makes so much
yeah.
sense. And so, oh, so good. Okay. So it's one of those things like, yes, we need to step back and take a look at the strategy. And I absolutely agree. I think the hard part with emails is like people are either on the two fence, so either don't email and then they email to sell something, or they feel like, oh, I can't. No, it's more like I don't want to spam people. So they're like, oh,
Mm,
you know what I mean? So and there's no right or wrong answer here, because I think like every business is going to be different. I found that when I started to email my list twice a week, my rates actually increased. So people
yeah.
wanted to hear from me regularly, more regularly, but compared to once a week. Is there
Mhm.
anything in particular that you're starting to see now with the consistency of emails?
You know what? I think that email marketing is far from dead. I think it is on the rise, because I think it's doing full circle. Back in the day, it was great. Back in the day is like, what, 15 years ago? It was amazing. And then it kind of went to socials, and now it's back to email marketing. Now, just because if people are opening your email, they may not even be reading it. Or say I think a great open rate is anywhere between 25 and 35%. Right. So if you're getting that, it's amazing. You have to obviously look at a great subject to get people to open it. But even if at the start people aren't opening it, you are appearing in their inbox. Your name is like there. So you've just got to get more and more consistent. And I like to have a plan of, you know, every kind of 6 months of what I'm going to do. So then I really don't feel overwhelmed by any of it anymore, because I have a plan for, what my podcast looks like. I have a plan for my emails. I have a series that is a live series on my Instagram once a week called Marketing Gossip, Superhero Styles. And I have a plan of, like, for the next couple of months, the subjects I'm going to talk about every week. So it doesn't come to a Wednesday and I'm like, shit, what am I going to talk about?
Mm.
And that is the plan, that is the strategy. So it's how can you, I guess, yeah, your question to emailing, but I think, yeah, it's popular. It's your
Mm.
warm audience. And I often see too, like, just to add this, often when businesses become large and they do want to have an exit strategy, the email list is like so valuable to businesses, and that increases the price of the business. So if you're thinking long term, if you're thinking retirement strategy, like for 10 years time, and you're looking at selling your business, the bigger you can grow your email list, the more lucrative it is for you.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Totally, totally. So I think like, okay, I want to bring back to the strategy piece.
Mm,
So you mentioned there was a couple of key things that we needed to consider. I want you just to give us an overview of like the way that you described it before was like we need to know our vision, then we need to
yep,
know goals. If I
yep.
missed something, then what your success strategy is or what success means to you, and then have the content or the categories. But that's mainly for social media, right? So if you were to give us an overview of like if you were to take a step back for a business and go, we need to map out your strategy, what are the core things you would look at?
So I would definitely look at, obviously, like I said, the vision, what your objectives are, and then try and hit those. So obviously strategy from a marketing perspective. So I look at everything. I know I just wrote a strategy for a travel business entering the market, particularly in the cruise business. And I looked at, like, the general cruise demographic, like what is the audience that are cruising? And, some things like, and this is like old kind of marketing, but seniors card. So there's a whole opportunity within seniors card for marketers to market their business, especially if you're in the cruise industry, and that's not social media. And then what other things did I include? Oh, I just love it because I come up with so many different ideas. But if you're looking local, like that's a good one. And then, that looking at like the SANFL and other parallel industries like the Big Four caravan parks. So that's like local marketing, right? And then obviously another one would be appearing as a guest on a podcast, and who is doing what in your industry, and what is their like downloads, and where could I best place people, and looking at that. And then like yeah, the social media is a big one. So it covers off organic, it covers off stories, it covers off ads, and then Google is huge. So you can actually, like, a lot of what I try and kind of create with strategies is a lot of free things that you can do, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to work hard, because you
Mm.
have to, you know, you're not going to become like the next whatever if you're not going to be prepared to bust your ass, because that's not like business. Whoever says that they're doing like 7 figures and are sitting on a beach for like, it's bullshit. It's like you have to work for it. And in your website, there's so much you can do. There's often, I find, I've got a reporting tool that I use. There's people have a lot of broken links in their website, and that's huge for business owners. And then yeah, like I could go on and on and on, and it's very like individualized to the business. But then at the end of the strategy, you have to be able to activate on everything that I like go through, or everything that you decide that you're going to put in for your 2023 brand awareness campaign and growing your audience and your business. You have to be able to break it down month by month. So what does that look like, and how are you going to achieve that? If it is you appearing in Forbes or whatever it is, like, when are you going to start to write the article? So you got to really break it down like further. So, are you going to reach out to this many podcasts to appear on, like, as a guest? Like, what does that look like? And, if you can get that trajectory right and do the things that you said, actually break them down month by month, that's when the plan becomes like magic.
Yeah. And I love that, because when you do have that bird's eye view and you take a step back, things become much easier to actually think about, okay, so this is how I would deliver that content, or this is the topics that I want to talk on, because it has a purpose, right? Like it's actually leading towards a goal. Whereas often I think so many business owners get so stuck because they're like, what am I going to put out this week? What am I going to do?
Oh,
And
I
you're like,
think those days are gone, unless I'm just so close to this now that that's my thinking, when you're so close to something, you can't see it anymore. But I think those days are gone with now what business owners have to do in order to show up, be
mm,
consistent. I think, yeah, I don't think you can do it any other way, especially if, you're like, everyone has a life. So you've just got to be really laser focused.
yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned you've been able to overcome some, mindset blocks around confidence and obviously consistency as well. Is there any other major mindset block that you've overcome in your business journey?
Um, I will say, when I became a mum for the first time, I found it really hard to show up again. Like really hard, because I had changed as a person. And I was like, it was just the most difficult, that was 2 years ago almost. It was the most difficult time for mindset, because it's like, well, I'm not the same person anymore. Like before that, I would be showing up in the morning, running, running along like along the river, like going to the gym at 6 a.m. And then I'm like, well, how am I going to show up on my socials now when I'm like breastfeeding at 4:30 a.m.? And then I'm like, my whole world has changed. And it's so like that for me was huge. And then I felt like an imposter in that kind of in this whole space of business. And I had to reinvent myself. And that was really hard on my mindset. that was really challenging. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Was there anything in
Um,
particular that you told yourself in order to overcome that imposter?
You know what? I hit the track. I like exercise for me is the number one thing that gets me out of my own head. And it releases those positive endorphins, which I love, and that helps a lot. Getting outside, which is away from my business because my office is at home, my life is at home, everything is at home. So getting some fresh air, and I tend to go for a walk regardless if so exercising is over and above, but the walking in the morning and the evening is like a reset for me, and
Mm.
it does wonders for my mindset, and also getting away. So yeah, taking yourself out of your like natural environment is yeah, it does a lot for mindset.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and get yourself some good books that are business books written by people that you're inspired by, that motivate you, that have done well, and read those. And that's what I did as well. Is you just try and, it's okay to not be like the previous version of yourself. And I think to be able to say that is huge. It's okay, but what
Mm.
does the new version look like? And
Yeah.
write it down. And now that helps me to show up.
Yeah, love that. Love that. And you
And
know what?
so,
Like so many
yeah,
also other women are going through what you go through. So
yeah,
often like sharing your journey helps them feel even more connected to you.
yeah. And I think come baby number two, I was so different. I just powered through. And I shared a lot more because I was like single in business, and that is, that's what I was doing. But now all of a sudden I became a mum in business, and I was like, well, my followers don't need to see me as a mum in business because they don't want the mum stuff. People don't want to see kids stuff. Like, so how do but that's me now. And like, that was huge. So I just had to like deal with that in my own head, and by, planning out what that looked like and how the new version of me was. It was is quite challenging.
Yeah, love it. And so what's next for Hayley Osborne?
Ooh, so I have a membership, Superhero Marketing, that has just closed the doors. I've just closed the doors to that now, but they will reopen in March next year. And next year, I have been planning, I'm going to have a couple of events, live events, because that is something that I love. And I know that you are writing a book, but I would love to write a book. That is kind of on my 2023 list. And I've mapped it out in my head already that, what is about 50,000 words, about 1,700 words a chapter. That would be like 20 something. I've like, so I've already started the plan
Broken down.
behind it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's a strategy. So I'm like, right, I reckon I could do that. And one thing with that is I'm just going to write, I'm going to come up with the chapters, and then the title of the book comes later, because I think that would stop me if I was trying to figure out what the title was before I started. So
Yeah,
the book thing is huge, but I plan to like grow my business well into
love it.
2023. So
Love it.
that's what's next.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you're going to write a book. I would absolutely suggest you just get that first draft to smash out whatever you can in the first few chapters just to get into the rhythm of it. Because I actually started mine like 3 years ago.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I think I got like, I don't know, 4 or 5 chapters in and then lost the passion for it. And I actually took a break and then had a whole heap of stuff happen family wise and then have
Mm.
come back to it this year and completely like eradicated the whole thing and started again because I was like, this is not even who I am anymore. And it was so
Yeah.
fascinating that I was like, oh, I needed to get a messy rough draft out in order for me to find my voice, in order for me to find my message. And it helped massively. So yeah, just start no matter what. Even if you're like, I don't even know if I'm going to have the time the whole year, just get started and you'll find that it'll just start percolating in the back of your mind.
Yeah. So I feel like podcast episodes are around 2,000 words. No, I don't write them all out, but if you could do that, you could do anything.
Mm, yeah,
So yeah,
love
that's
it.
exciting. But no more
Amazing.
babies next year. It's work time.
Back to work. Love it. Thank you so much for joining me today, Hayley. It's been such a
Oh,
joy chatting with you.
thank you so much for having me. I've loved it.
Amazing.